I'm Arun Kumar Krishna. I recently started a company, founder of AS13.ai, where we are into at a service stages, end-to-end consulting. Starting from strategy to support and maintenance of all the technology stuff that we do in terms of services. Then eventually we are developing internal products also. Today we have our guest Aditya Uthappa from a Korean. Aditya, from just to introduce yourself.
Hey, my name's Aditya. Thank you for having me on. Co-founder of Korean. We're a 6.5 years cybersecurity strategy consulting company. We focus on working with clients in the health and finance space around security strategy, compliance, audit, and testing. 400 plus customers in the US, growing rapidly around the world with some presence. There are about 175 of us, close to about 140 in India, and the rest in the US and Canada. And the big gap that we are trying to solve is how do you take enterprise grade security and deploy it for companies that are fast growth, mid
Yeah.
market, or in extremely regulated environments.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah. See, one thing I wanted to just get the introduction out of the way so that the team can use it. Second thing, I think we met a couple of years back. How it's been since then now? How is, your journey and the Korean journey throughout it?
Yeah, so when we met a couple of years ago, of course, Korean was still trying to figure out what is it that a Korean wants to be, right? From a journey standpoint, it's been great. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that we started to realize is the need gap that we started to build the company for. It's kind of become the core reason why Aquarian exists today. And that's what we're focusing on. And that's been, frankly speaking, very, very, very fruitful for us as a company.
Nice, nice. But overall, I think last time when I checked your website, it was 300 customers. Now you're saying 400. I assume you guys are great, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, we are adding a bunch of new customers, new regions. The good part is, I think, client advocacy, as they say, is the highest form of marketing,
Yeah.
right? And we've worked with some fantastic customers and partners who have kind of opened up new markets, new client logos for us, which has enabled our growth, right? And of course, having a great delivery team. All of this, or actually none of this would have been possible without this great delivery structure that we've created, and these amazing people who have been at Aquarian for numerous years, who kind of drive the needle on everything. Because whenever I speak to every customer of ours, they only have the very best to say, and that's led to a lot of growth. Because then they go out and talk about us, and they're like, hey, you know what, you should check these guys out, and they're really great.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We see when I was CISO, right? I think I had that industry gap of delivery where I've seen
Yeah.
with most vendors promise a lot of stuff, but when it comes to delivery, they kind of vanish in terms of whatever the promise is. And that's where even wherever I went, I kind of put a word in for you guys because I saw that more professional managing expectation. I think that's the best word because delivery, you can deliver a lot of stuff, but managing the expectation, hey, this is what we do, this we don't do, so don't
Yeah.
expect to deliver, right? So that
Yeah.
was clear distinction, so everybody were happy at the end. Like, probably I introduced for a couple of customers that I worked in the past as consulting, right?
Yes.
That's where I liked it. What you guys do. You're very clear and very focused. If somebody asks for more, hey, sorry, we can't. Right. So it sets the
Yes.
expectations pretty clear, and that's one of the reason I see why you guys succeeded in such places, right?
Yes. No, thank
Because
you. Thank you for those kind words.
yeah, and most of the security projects have this challenge of scope creep, right? And you guys manage those exceptionally well. That's one of the things that I like about, which is great. Just wanted to understand, right? Like, you have been in cybersecurity. How did you enter cybersecurity? Is it more, by chance or passion? Like, how was it?
Well, that's an interesting story. So, actually, most people don't know this, but I'm actually second generation cybersecurity. I wish I could have taken a lot of credit for figuring out security on my own. I did not. I already had a background. So, to give you context, my dad was in the army, Indian Army, and the army in the 90s was going through immense digital transformation along with the
Yes.
2000s, right? And a big part of the infrastructure was, of course, built in house. But then came the entire realm of security, right? So he worked on a bunch of things internally, and that's was his exposure to cybersecurity. He was an engineer, so he had an engineering background, right? And that's how essentially I got exposed to security. He would talk about it. I found it really cool. So after college, I knew, this is what I had to do. And in college, when got out of, in the placements, this is 2009, right? We were just wrapping up placements, and 2010 was when I was planning to join. I had three offers, and surprisingly, the lowest paying one was security. But I was so clear that security is something that I want to work on, and I think luck favored. So ever since that, 15 years in cybersecurity today, I've done multiple things. Pen testing, I used to, do a lot of pen testing, ran a pen test team at Palladian. Um, did a bit of GRC audits, ISO, the likes of them. Got into the business side of the house and started focusing on how can we, go to market with very large partners or go to new markets, and how do we get cybersecurity across to new sectors and geographies. That's what I started focusing on. And then Aquarian happened. Aquarian was built with the entire premise that we wanted to have a very deep focus on delivery, and we wanted to deliver to the best of our ability using whatever resources we had. uh, yeah, so that was my entry into cybersecurity. So, second generation, my dad was in the army. He was a colonel in the army. He spent a lot of time there, and I kind of picked up things there on forth.
Nice, nice. But since you bring up one point, right? Indian military digitization, now the whole government is going against digitization, right? Led with Aadhaar, UPI, and other stuff. How do you see when you put focus on the market for growth? For example, you guys do business in India and outside, right? How do you see the potential in India and let's say the business outside India? Like, if there is a chance that you have to prioritize something, how would you prioritize?
Yeah, so truth be told, most of our clientele is overseas. Um, And I get asked this question a lot of times, right? Like, why are you only focusing on certain markets? It's because of focus. I mean, for Premal and I, Premal, our CEO and our co-founder, right? For both of us, our backgrounds have been selling into the US. That's why we've built a network. So that kind of became the obvious market to go after when we started. And that's how we got to our first 100 customers. Frankly speaking, we got to the first 100 customers between the two of us and Shalin, who's our head of sales, without a very robust sales structure. And this was predominantly through networks, through folks that we knew,
Wow,
through
nice.
people that we've worked with, and, and who trusted us, right? And believed in the message that we would try to sell. Right? Uh, Now, that said, India has been nascent on cybersecurity, right? And I'm just going to say it out there. It was nascent. Today, it's not nascent anymore,
Yeah.
right? If I were to look at it 10 years ago, there's a stark difference between the US and India.
Yeah.
Today, there isn't, right? 10 years ago, most companies spending on security were predominantly in BFSI or any highly regulated industry in India, right? If you're anybody who's in the BFSI ecosystem, then you were being mandated a lot more to get secure. Today, it's changing, and that's good to see. I'm a DPDP, of course. I think it is a strong push. But frankly speaking, there's another thing that's happening, right? Another phenomena. If you look at India, right, and this is, of course, I'll break it up into two parts. Uh, the first part is the large companies, they want their service providers and vendors to be more secure because you have access to a lot of data, their network, all sorts of intel. So these large companies using the third-party risk management programs are pushing security down onto the service providers and vendors because an attacker today knows that these vendors and service providers are the weakest links, unlike before, right? Um, so now they're not trying to focus on hitting the enterprise head on. They're trying to go after the service providers and third parties. And that's led to a trickle down effect where these companies now have to go get secure, their service providers have to get secure, and then trickle down effect. That's led to a massive amount of adoption in security. The
Yes.
second is what I call as tailwinds in security. If a Korean would have started maybe 20 years ago, it would have been a very different growth story. We wouldn't have had the hockey stick that we had, right? Globally, the entire cybersecurity compliance and assurance space has grown drastically because industries today have their own regulations. If you're in health, you have to meet HIPAA or high trust requirements, right? If you're doing business in the US, a SOC 2 is considered, your baseline security credential that you have to furnish, and they're on fourth, right? The US came up with NIST, there's FedRAMP, CMMC, you name it. Every industry has its own nuanced framework. Or so if you're trying to do business and or you are trying to figure out a way that you can have a differentiator with your competitor, security credentials today have become that instrument or tool, right? So if I have to look at going into the US, I need a SOC 2, right?
Yeah.
Or if I'm trying to work globally, I need a ISO 27001. Or if I'm trying to get into Europe, I have to be GDPR compliant. Or I'm trying to sell an AI solution there, I need to get an EU AI Act compliance, right? So these two factors have really fueled growth as per me. And that's what we're seeing in India as well, right? So Indian companies, larger companies have trickled down security into smaller service providers and vendors. And on the flip side, on the other side, um, if I'm trying to go global or I'm trying to work with, companies around the world or even in India, I have to have baseline security assurance that I can showcase to them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. See, a couple of points that I think, first of all, amazing, just without a large sales team, because we are a startup now. Even with zero sales team, let's put it that way, only through networks we manage it in within 3 months, six customers, because this is just the trust business, right? That we can
Yes.
get the foundation on. Amazing for getting that 100 customers or with a lean team. I think that's an amazing achievement, because I see a lot of startups just go to market without any plan on getting that revenue. The initial one, just go with the trusted people that you have within your network. I think that will give you a strong foundation. And the second point which you mentioned, right, the trickle down of regulations, I see the pattern emerging in India, because even in India, I think by next year, a lot of these IT, OT, utility companies, right? For example, power companies, electricity companies, they have been mandated to follow guidelines from the central government. So I
Yes.
see it is becoming a big push, which can have like India's maturity movement in cybersecurity. They are forcing third parties who are working with these utility companies, right? So it kind of picking up. But as you said, being US the biggest market, even the clients that we have, I think more preference would be there, because definitely there is difference when you compare to last 10 years in India, how the market was. Now it is growing in terms of what the understanding and the investment into cybersecurities are going. But predominantly, as you said, the regulation gets trickled down, the third party risk assessment driven by the big companies onto their partners. One of the scenario recent was the CrowdStrike one, right? The packages got compromised. It's all over
Yes.
the
The
internet.
NPM. Yes. It's all over the internet. Yes, I mean, supply chain risk is so big, right? And it's twofold. One is, of course, your direct vendor, but secondly, supply chain, like software supply chain code, right? So, what kind of libraries are you using? What kind of packages are you using? These NPM based attacks have been on the rise, right?
Yeah.
CrowdStrike was just the latest, but there have been so many. And that is where Europe actually made a stride towards it with the introduction of the EU CRA, Cyber Resiliency
Yeah.
Act, right? If you're someone who's a software developer, product developer, or a SaaS platform provider, you have to share SBOM details de facto. And even
Yes.
once you decommission your product, you still should be able to provide support so that people can keep the software up to date, because all sorts of libraries are being utilized, right? In some cases, these libraries are being maintained by folks who are doing it out of the goodwill of their heart.
Yes.
But and it's the open source community is so strong and so, and so, like, they really look at secure, building something and sharing it with people. But security is typically on the down low there because of the kind of resources they have. That is
Yeah.
where larger companies are adopting these third party libraries code, have to ensure they're compliant. So that's just a new vector in this entire space.
See, one of the thing, especially when it happens to these cybersecurity leader companies, right? For example, Microsoft has been part of a breach. CrowdStrike has been part of the breach. You can name any vendors. Fortinet was in the news for almost a year. Cisco
Yeah.
gateway were getting breached. See, a lot of the challenge that I had explaining this to customer is, see, these are security vendors. They follow, they ask you to follow best practices. They ask you, still they get breached. It's very hard to justify to customers, say, even they can make mistakes, right? Because these
Yes.
are supposed to be cybersecurity leaders in the space. Yeah. Do you counter any of such questions from customers? Let's say, in this case,
Yes.
right? Hey, we got impacted by CrowdStrike. What should we
Yeah.
do?
No, like you said, right? I think for security companies, we need to eat our own dog food.
Yes.
Everything that we that we so so and that is where, see, it's not about whether a company can be compromised or not, right? Any persistent attack can sometimes lead to some level of, an impact. It's about resilience, right? And how do companies like ourselves have to ensure that we're secure is by having a very strong security practice. We have an internal CISO, right? And we got a CISO on board very early on in our journey, because it's very, very, very important that we look at how we can secure our infrastructure. We monitor it constantly. We monitor, various elements associated to endpoints. All of that is done to the T. The level of security sophistication we have is very similar to a very large enterprise out there, even though we may be much smaller, because our inherent risk is high,
Yes.
right? So we're spending a lot on the best in class security tools. Every year we go through a rigor where we're looking at the latest and greatest tools that can enable us to detect attacks faster, to remediate things faster, and frankly speaking, keep our data secure. So
Yeah.
we're constantly looking at stuff, and we have a massive internal push. Now, why do some of these breaches happen sometimes? It's frankly speaking, it could be in a very large environment. Sometimes there's something that's forgotten, which hits the news, right? Or some error that happens, right? Because of which it leads to something bigger. But that said, once you have your controls in place, it's very important for you to measure if suppose that they're adequately being utilized, or whether they're adequately in place, and then monitor them constantly. Most companies think of compliance or hitting, meeting a certain level of security as the pinnacle. It's only the starting point. There on forth, you have to ensure that you monitor. And the example that I always take is, and that's actually the premise of the product that we built 3 years ago, Gorico, which is how do we build good security hygiene and help customers maintain their security over time, right? So to give you an example, if we are trying to lose 10 kgs, what do? Right? We typically, we attempt to run 5 kilometers every day. We skip dinner. We lose those 10 kgs in 2 months, right? And we are typically doing it because, hey, there's a big wedding in the family, or I have to go somewhere, a big event, etc., etc. The moment we hit our weight that we're trying to hit, we stop doing the very same things that we were doing. And that's when the pounds come back on. Security is very simple, right? You
Yeah.
spent all this money, this time trying to hit a particular security posture. But then if you stop doing these things that you were supposed to do, your security just goes back to, ground zero. So we all know how fast we put on those 10 kgs again. You rather just have eaten a salad and done a walk, and that way you would have kept off the weight. And that is the cyber hygiene that we're trying to inculcate in our customers and even internally.
I think that's a great point because even in my experience, right? what I've seen most of the places, customer buy various tools, and sometimes when we go for auditing or checks or even implementation, they don't even have the password, right? And there are various reasons that could go, but the most common ones that we see is, hey, this was handled by that person left. The change in
Yes.
leadership or the change in owners managing those technologies kind of becomes like a black hole. Nobody else knows about it. And the plan that they had for implementation, with you mentioned, right? That sequential improvement of controls that not many people have seen in the industry, keep up with it. It's kind of either plug and play, implement it once and forget, or they don't even know it exists. These are the
Yeah.
two scenarios that are most common. I think that's great. You guys are focusing on that continuous improvement because that's one being the mantra of cyber security, right? You have to constantly improve your tools, validate those controls, whether it's working or not. Yeah, that's really good that you guys. I think you guys have a platform that automatically makes this check, or
Yes.
how is it?
So we have a platform that can enable and orchestrate some of it automatically, of course, through integrations. But security is still a lot, is very hands on, right?
Yeah.
Still, because you need multiple levels of approval. You need to go fetch this data from here, there. So there are nifty ways that we have tried to simplify it, but it still requires a commit, right? And it requires some time. So that is where, companies like ourselves then can, what I've started to realize is it's most popular, it's most utilized when customers can commit a certain amount of time. Otherwise, they're like, hey, this tool's not giving me value because they have to commit a certain amount of time. What we also do is we deploy a small fractional layer of our people who can help drive the program for you as well, right? So that is why we've seen adoption being very high.
Nice, nice. See, let's say we are talking about Goriko, right? What do you guys feel? Compliance driven security or innovation driven securities? What do you guys imply?
I want to say innovation. I'd be It's it's what we all want to hear, but
Yes.
unfortunately, the reality is compliance-driven security because compliance is driving security. Because companies have to meet various regulations, as you can see on top. I have a few logos on top, right? But because of that, companies are making the spend, which is great, which is why compliance exists in a sense, right? Which is why regulatory bodies exist, which is why it's important to have all of these constitutions or these institutions in place, right? They typically help create these instruments that would then keep everybody secure and then raise the bar of security.
Now, coming to the innovation side, compliance side is straight, right? Now, there is
Yeah.
this AI buzz, right? Do you guys have
Yeah.
putting AI into Goriko? Like that comes, let's say, there's no compliance saying you need to have AI products, right?
Yes. Yes.
How do you guys see any upcoming launches on AI native stuff or?
Yeah. So at Aquarian, we have our own internal applied AI team. So when I first started to delve into understanding why we need to look at AI, it was about I think 15 months ago, roughly, right? Where we started to take it very seriously that we need to have something in place. And that's when we started, building did a pilot internally to showcase that, hey, we can, using AI, get more efficient. See, at the end of the day, as a services company, there's a lot of use cases that we can translate to, implement using AI, right? It could give us a lot more efficiency, accuracy, the likes of them. Or, like I say, it can do a first pass on a lot of the stuff that we do, right?
Yes.
So we've done some of that. Gorico today has AI operationalized on many levels. There are lots of use cases that we're building. We have, like we have a big development and applied AI team, almost 25 of us focusing on that day in and day out, right?
Wow. Nice.
With the entire intent that we look at some of the use cases that are core for our clients. So, like you said, is your solution automated or not,
Yeah.
right? Frankly, I want to give the ability of a customer to manage their overall security program with lesser number of people, where the
Yeah.
L1 and L2s can in some way be handled by AI, which is go fetch information, do a first level validation, do a correlation, right? Likes of that. right? As simple as that. Or go through this particular document, or if you have to go fetch data from a particular source, go do that, create workflows, the like that. So we're
Yeah.
doing a bunch of things internally, but what I'm most excited about is we do have 400 plus customers. They're using AI in some wonderful ways, right?
Yes.
And that is been the most learning for us, the company, right? We're over 50 of us last year got certified on ISO 42001, which was the leading standard, back then and even today, with the entire effort to start working toward on AI security projects. Today, at any given time, we're doing over, a few dozen AI projects in some way or form. It could be as simple as help me figure out my shadow AI, right? So your inventory. It could be set up my AI security governance program, AI policy procedures, uh, come do a chatbot pen testing, LLM pen test, the likes of them, a red team assessment. So we're doing a ton of things. And of course, assurance is building in the space. So we're doing a lot of ISO 42001 projects, a lot of EU AI, uh, Act compliance projects. We're doing a lot of NIST AI RMF projects. High Trust has its own AI, add-on framework as well. So we're doing a certification as well. So we're doing a lot on that.
Nice.
Has been exciting because I've seen customers who have homegrown LLMs, who are using third parties, who have done a wrapper, who are using open source, and the challenges are different between all of them, right?
Yeah, totally. See, that is something we have our own product that we are launching within couple of weeks. What we are expecting is the one thing that you mentioned, right? Customers get their things done quickly or more efficiently, right? One of the things in my experience, there was this geopolitical issue happened. CISO asked for an issue. Hey, how am I looking? It takes 2 or 3 weeks to build them a posture report saying, hey,
Yeah,
these are my public posture. These are the adversaries that they are after, and we fall under their scope, their tactic, techniques, procedure. This is your posture. If the product, something similar what you said, is able to do that, you know connect to different data source, get the data out, give them the information, educate them to make decisions, because most of the leaders are looking for a information or informed decision making, right?
yeah,
And that information, they are reliant on teams and tools. Sometimes they have capabilities they can get in, sometimes they don't. They rely on third parties to get those information to make right decisions. That is something that a simple trailer what we are trying to do is, there is existing data in security, everywhere. You talk any product, it has a bunch of data. So what we are trying is simple: take a sim solution, build an NLP on top of it, give people freedom to do. Because one of the challenges that we were facing when I was consulting is they need somebody to get the information out of the tool because they don't
yeah,
know that, right? So we are trying to eliminate that barrier. Hey, if you want information, you did not know the tool. You need to know the domain, what you want. And NLP can translate, it understands the tool and fetches the information. So we're starting pilot with SIM, EDR, and other stuff. The idea is to, make that information flow without friction. For example, even for SOC analyst, as you mentioned, if they have to generate reports, they have to click through like 20 or 30 different tabs and get the information. But
yeah.
kind of Copilot has become the standard now. Everybody
Yes.
to write a prompt and get the information out, and that is something in the similar lines. See, this is an experiment that we are doing, myself included, right? I never built a product before. I worked in product companies, been a CTO, CISO, but this is more of, can we get a product to market? Probably you guys have done it. You get some guidance on it, because it's more of a
Yeah,
personal passion, because I see there is a lot of improvement that can go into cybersecurity. Especially I've seen industry where vendors are sold 20 different solutions. They don't know how to use it, right? It's some of the common problems that I've seen in the industry. So that's where we're trying to tackle, but it would be an interesting thing. But as I said, first product to the market, we don't know what to expect, but going through the network, one thing I would take from you, because that's the
yes.
easy route to build trust and get customer feedback and iterate. That's what we are aiming for. Hopefully everything goes well there. I've seen missing in the cybersecurity. And if you look at our company also, you know, trust, truth, and transparency. We don't say,
Yeah.
hey, we will do that, we will do this.
Yes.
If you need, we will do that. If you don't need, we'll straight away say, "Hey, you don't need to do this because it's already
Exactly.
there, right?" And
Exactly.
that's what we are into. Just deliver value. Don't expect anything else from the customer. See,
Yes.